What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video. Now this is video 4 in a series of videos that I've made looking at the Pax System, which is coming with Worldslayer, the expansion that comes at the end of June for Outriders. Now the Pax System itself is a further way for you to customize and lean heavily into a certain build style for your class, and these are unique in each one of the 4 classes and offers a certain amount of points that you can essentially use to customize further. Now, since I said this is video 4, previously I covered Devastator, Trickster, and Technomancer, and in many ways, at least for me, I left the best for last because I'm a Pyromancer main. It's the class of the 4 that I like the most, and so I was super excited to not only leave this to the end so I could savor it, but also really excited to jump into it. Now, first of all, just some basic facts about the Pax System is essentially this doesn't replace our leveling as usual, and it doesn't replace our standard, build tree that we have or our class tree that we have. Rather, this is an additional system on top of that with some pretty heavy buffs that you can get if you go all the way to the end of these lines and you get those final capstones. Now, the tree is broken up into an upper and a lower part, and generally speaking, the upper part tends to lean more towards firepower builds and the lower part tends to lean more towards anomaly builds. Now, we've already seen with some of the classes, like for instance the Trickster, that this was not really the case and that you could still hybridize in between them. And that just makes me a lot more excited, because what it means to me is that even though we think these things are sort of set in stone, it means that there's still a lot of experimentation and a lot of things we can try out there, and something that might necessarily look like it favors firepower more might in actual fact do pretty damn well with anomaly. Now, when it comes to the Pyromancer itself, the top tree Gunblazer, as I said, is leaning more towards firepower, whereas the bottom tree Pyromaniac of course leans more towards anomaly. Now, when we do actually start looking at the trees, and as usual what I've been doing with this is I've been splitting it up in Excel like this so we can just look at each one of the points individually. Now, what's important to know as well is that we only get access to 5 of these points during the playthrough of the game, or rather that's all that's ever allotted to us. There's no way for you to get any more, so the maximum amount of pack points that you can have on one character per class is 5. Now, with those 5 points you can drop them in anywhere in those previous nodes that we saw there, but generally speaking, as also mentioned, you kind of want to push through to those final capstones because that's where the real juice exists. Now, when we move over here, as I said, we'll start with Gunblazer first, which seems to be the top tree for firepower. And then we're looking at the first one here, which is coming in hot, which says deal 15% more damage to enemies above 80% health and 30% more damage to enemies below 30% health. Now, this is pretty good. A flat damage buff across the board of 15% is not groundbreaking, but it's also nothing to sneeze at. And definitely the fact that you're dealing 30% more damage to enemies that are below 30% health is really going to help you chip away at enemies that are sort of near death, or at that last 30% of life from a captain or an elite or a boss of some kind who do have pretty big, large, health pools. And so this is actually going to make you take those off quicker. Now, we're going to come back, or we'll talk about this a little bit more, because of course we know that the Pyromancer has a lot of skills which cause burn. And those burn ticks are probably, at least I would imagine so, also going to benefit from this additional damage that once you breach these damage thresholds. So it's actually going to make those burn ticks a lot more juicier as you sort of get to the 30% and below sort of area. Now, the first place in where we get to make a choice is where we choose between Ashen Regalia and Ashen Wake. Now, Ashen Regalia says killing marked enemies increases your damage mitigation for 5% for 8 seconds. This stacks up to 3 times, which means you can get 15% damage mitigation. I almost said negation. That would be sweet. For 8 seconds. Now, generally speaking, and again, I don't view myself as being like the foremost expert of Pyro, but I do play Pyro a lot. And a lot of the times the way that I like playing Pyro is kind of threading the needle and going all out, being very, very glass cannon. So if I am leaning in that way, which kind of again doesn't make sense to me in a firepower build, because generally in firepower builds you're a little bit more tanky, maybe. This doesn't seem to me all that awesome. I think the damage mitigation is great here, and something that I've noticed in the other videos that I've done on this topic is that oftentimes you'll find that a certain path in the Pax tree is more for if you're playing solo, and a certain path in the Pax tree is more for if you're playing in groups. I would definitely say this is more for solo. Generally speaking, if you are in a group as a Pyromancer, you are not really the tank. You're kind of like either the AoE damage machine, or you are essentially debuffing stuff. Or yeah, you could lean into firepower and all of that, but generally speaking, you are kind of fulfilling like almost a support or an AoE role in a way. And again, that's only if you lean into the whole role mechanics, anything like that. But that's how I like to play. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to me in a group setting, because in a group setting, you should kind of like not be getting a shot a lot in the first place. Hopefully there's someone else in the front kind of soaking up that damage, like a Devastator or maybe a Trickster that's in close range fighting the enemies. So that then brings us to Ash and Wake, which is the second one, which says your shots damage all enemies afflicted with ash within 4-meter radius of the target, dealing 35% of the damage dealt. Now this is more like it. This definitely seems like it's more geared towards this group, you know, sort of composition that I was talking about just now. And so this essentially means that you have this great little way of like spreading some additional damage. Your shots damage all enemies afflicted with ash. So basically you could Ash Blast or something like that, and then when you shoot something on the edge of the monsters that are Ash Blast, then that damage kind of like ripples through the enemies as long as it's within a 4-meter radius. I really like that. I think it's pretty cool. Then we get to Hot Streak, and this is the third one. This one we have to take, no choice here. This says critical shots increase weapon damage by 7%. Bonus lasts 4 seconds longer and stacks up to 5 times. Now, this is pretty damn sweet. The fact that it can stack up to 5 times means that you can go all the way up to 35%, of course, and it lasts for 4 seconds, which means as long as you're hitting crits. Now, I think at this point in time, we have to look at firepower tricks and the weapons that are usually used here. Now, I've certainly played firepower Pyromancer with, I would say, LMGs have been good, not really shotguns so much. Again, you kind of like want to be a little bit further back, so I would say anything that has a little bit of like medium to long range. So double guns are okay, tactical rifles are great, just normal like automatic rifles are great. LMGs are fantastic because of the large clip size. So this basically means that you're gonna have to pay attention to hit your crit shots, but then again, with those kinds of weapons, it's not really that difficult. Like for instance, a tactical assault rifle, hitting your crit shots are super duper easy. So this is kind of like a bonus that you'll be able to keep up a lot. And of course, when you hit the crits, then it means your follow-up crits are going to hit that much harder. And it's just kind of like a ramp up built in on itself. So it means if you're shooting a boss with a very easy crit spot and the boss is kind of standing still, or for that matter, you're running with a party that are freezing the enemies or making them stand in place so you can pop those crits even easier, this is just going to be really good. I like this. And as a person that prefers Anomaly Pyromancer to Firepower Pyromancer, this is still pretty impressive to me, and I think there's a lot going on here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do top, middle, and bot, like we did with the other video. So our first one here is carbonization. Can I just say that again, this is probably bias of me to say this, but I really like the name of the nodes of the Pyromancer. I think they sound fucking badass. So carbonization and carbon footprint is the top 4 and 5 node. And this says enemies, so carbonization says enemies hit by your immobilized skills receive 25% more anomaly damage for 4 seconds. Now the skills, of course, that are affected, your immobilized skills are Feed the Flames and Ash Blast. Now, usually I would say, and especially because we've seen how the previous talents in this Pax tree go, when you're playing Firepower Pyromancer, you're gonna have Feed the Flames or Ash Blast. Maybe even now it makes sense to go maybe something like Volcanic Rounds, Feed the Flames, and Ash Blast. Of course, Feed the Flames has mods that let you reload your gun, so you can kind of keep Volcanic Rounds up forever. And so there's certainly reason to have these in here, but basically this just says that enemies hit by your immobilized skills receive 25% more anomaly damage for 4 seconds. Now, this says receives 25% more anomaly damage, not just from you. So this again is really good in a party setting because it means that your teammates who are maybe focused on anomaly damage are going to be able to capitalize from this additional damage. When we go over to carbon footprint, this says each enemy hit by immobilized skills, again, of course, Feed the Flames and Ash Blast. And I have to be careful because I keep wanting to say Ass Blast the whole time, which is a terrible habit that I have from all the nights that we stream this game. By the way, shout out, check us out every Thursday night when I stream on YouTube and we do Outriders community challenge, you know, carries and hang out and we have beers and we just shoot the shit and we kind of keep this community alive. It's a great game. It's a great bunch of people playing it and we'd love to have you. So keep an eye out for that. But carbon footprint says that each enemy hit by immobilized skills reduces the cooldown of other immobilized skills by 1 second. So basically, if you have a 10-second Ash Blast and you hit 10 enemies with Ash Blast, then this is gonna give you your Ash Blast back. This is pretty sick, I gotta say, and I really like this. I have no intention of immediately playing Firepower Pyromancer when I get my hands on the expansion, but by God, this is definitely something that I want to check out, because the ability to essentially lock stuff down, and again, the point is, wait, hold on, I think I'm screwing up. Each enemy hit by immobilized skills reduce the cooldown of other immobilized skill. Okay, so I was about to say this is the most broken shit since, you know, Tuesday, but this obviously means that when you have in your toolbar, you have Ash Blast and you have Feed the Flames. When you Ash Blast, it reduces the cooldown of your next Feed the Flames. And then when you Feed the Flames, it reduces the cooldown of your next Ash Blast. But this does, however, still mean that in ongoing combat, you're going to be able to pull that combo, Feed the Flames, Ash Blast, Feed the Flames, Ash Blast, the whole time off a lot. And in short succession, as long as you're hitting multiple enemies. And again, Ash Blast is a radius based sort of pulse that hits enemies. So by default, if you increase the range of Ash Blast, you're going to be hitting a lot of stuff, especially if there's a lot of enemies on the screen and they're not resisting you. And in the case of Feed the Flames, there are also ways of augmenting it with mods that it doesn't just pull from one enemy, but actually pulls from multiple. So again, there's another way for you to sort of get this. But nonetheless, you will probably be stacking cooldown reduction, even a little bit of it into this, so you're already going to be bringing the cooldowns of those skills down a little bit, and this just added on there means that you're just going to be able to pull these off rapidly. So not quite as fucked as I thought it was originally when I read it, but after, you know, actually using my brain, then it kind of makes a little bit more sense. So then when we go over to the middle one, this is carbon ammo. This is just ridiculous. I've of course looked at this before, so I'm not seeing this for the first time now, but this is fucked. Increases your magazine size by 20%. Now I know that's not a big deal, but it kind of is a big deal. In the case of, like, if you're using tactical assault rifles, this means you have a huge mag. But if you're using an LMG, my God, because especially if you're building some reload mechanic in there that Feed the Flames is giving you like 30% of your mag back or something like that, you are never gonna run out of bullets. This is ridiculous. I love it. I think we're gonna be making techno bros like super sad in the pants. I mean, this gives you basically the magazine size of, you know, a minigun Technomancer. I love it. I think it's fucking hilarious. It's cool. When we go over to Bullet Frenzy, this says shots with assault weapons increase your weapon damage by 2%. This effect stacks until you stop shooting. So again, I don't think it's probably not going to be the most efficient way of using this, but I fucking love the idea of a giant LMG with this massive mag, and you're just shooting, and you just keep getting that weapon damage bonus increase. This doesn't mention that it's hard capped. I'm assuming it's hard capped somewhat. I mean, if then again, yeah, I mean, you are eventually gonna run out of bullets, especially if you don't have some kind of reloading mechanism. But I mean, let's say for instance let's say you're shooting with a gun that has 200 bullets in it, right? The amount of damage that you're going to be able to stack with this, as long as you, and this says shots increase your weapon damage. This doesn't mean it has to hit. You could be shooting into the fucking ground and you could be getting this effect to stack up. So you can essentially spin this thing up. And again, this is just I'm assuming this. We'll of course test the shit out of this when the game comes out. But this means that you could essentially spin the gun up and then just hose something as it appears and comes around the corner, which is pretty damn sweet. Again, even if you're just spinning in like 50 bullets, that's 100% additional damage. That's nuts. So I really like this. Jesus, am I going to have to play a Firepower Pyromancer? Is this what the game is telling me? Am I understanding you correct, game? Is this what you're telling me? Carbon ammo and Bullet Frenzy sounds twice as delicious as carbonization and carbon footprint, and I already really like that. Okay, so then getting to the last part here, which is solar flare and critical mass. And I have to try and keep this video under 30 minutes, but because this is Pyromancer, I fucking carry on a lot. But we have solar flare and critical mass, right? Solar flare says activating skills increases your critical damage by 10% for 6 seconds, stacks up to 2 times. So you could go volcanic rounds, there you get your first 10%, and then your ash blast, you get your second 10%, and then, you know, that's it. And this stays for, this is by far, you know, in my mind, the most underwhelming of the 3 so far, I would say. Then when we get to critical mass, this says critical shots on marked enemies turn all shots to critical shots for 3 seconds. So I mean, if you've got the whole like low cooldowns because of cooldown reduction, and so you are constantly, you know, you kind of like mentally checking it in your head, where you're making sure that you at least always get like the 10% up there, and sometimes stack it up to 2 times as long as you can keep your cooldowns up. And then critical shots on marked enemies. Now marked enemies are of course enemies that are affected by your abilities as a pyromancer, so those enemies are considered marked because that's also the healing mechanism that's built into pyromancer. So marked enemies getting killed gives you life. So this is critical shots turn all shots to critical shots for 3 seconds. So it just means that if you for instance have this up, I mean, it doesn't really matter that you keep solar flare up. The point, because yeah, the 20% additional critical damage, I mean, that's cute, but this is pretty sick though, the fact that if you're using a tactical AR and you get that first, you know, that like triple shot and one of them is a crit, or all 3 of them are crit, then boop, this hits, and then you can just go body, like get like, you know, 4 or 5 body rips in there, and all of those count as critical shots. I think it's cool. I think the 3 seconds is super low though. And again, I don't know what to make it. Like, I don't know if we make the 3 seconds 6 seconds, then I'm suddenly like, oh my god, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But 3 seconds seem really low to me, especially once again in a group environment, because some of those shots might miss. If you're in the back and guys are in front, you might hit fucking titanium grass or something like that, and you're missing out on some of that damage. So yeah, I think it's a little bit underwhelming compared to carbonization, carbon footprint, and carbon ammo bullet frenzy, which is of course top and middle. So yeah, but dude, like a lot going on here, and of course, you know, I'm all for it. Once I'm tired of playing anomaly pyromancer, fucking never, then of course this gives me something to do. But however, I have 2 pyromancers, so I can just go go complete anomaly, and go the other one go firepower, and I never have to change gear, anything like that. So fucking yay me. Okay, so by the way, I do apologize if my voice sounds different than usual. I am currently in the midst of fighting the worst flu I've ever had, which is actually what caused some delay in the creation of this video, of course. But I'm also high on meds, so I am pushing through. But okay, so we get to anomaly builds then next, and let's be honest, this is where I wanted to fucking be. I'm gonna savor this fucking moment, and then let's get right in it, and let's talk about the first one here, which is called Melting Point. Now, Melting Point says this increases your resistance piercing by 15% when above 80% health, and 30% when below 40% health. Now, the bottom line is resistances on enemies is a big problem for you if you are playing anomaly-based builds, especially if you're playing builds that kind of require you or want you to put a status on an enemy that ticks off and deals, you know, damage to them, or, you know, in the case of the trickster, keeps them up in the air, or, you know, anything like that. And so the point is, if once those get resisted or get resisted a bunch of times, you're losing out on a lot of utility, you're losing out on a lot of damage, and that's of course a problem. So any amount of like built-in resistance piercing that you can have, and usually you want to kind of pick that up in your normal talent tree. When we pick it up in the pack study, and again, we don't have a choice, we have to take Melting Point. Now, this is not as awesome as I wanted it to be, but certainly this is still a fairly strong first point or first sort of pick. So let's see how the rest develop. But I don't hate this, but I also don't think it's like, you know, the bomb. So when we get to our first choice here, we have Scorched Flesh, and then we have Master Exploder. Now, this is a Scorched Flesh basically says that activating ignite skills. So our ignite skills are of course Heat Wave, Volcanic Rounds, and Phaser Beam. So when we activate ignite skills, we increase our status power by 15% for 5 seconds. Stacks up to 3 times, so we can get it to go up to 45%. Now, status is a big, or is an important one for Pyro for several different reasons. First of all, it affects the way how your burns tick, and secondly, in the case of Phaser Beam, it is another way that you can increase the damage of Phaser Beam. So Phaser Beam gets some of its damage from anomaly power stacking, but it gets a huge amount of its damage from status power. So if you are going to be leaning into Phaser here, then of course this is a good thing. And furthermore, if you are going to be leaning towards, and what we're going to see later on in this tree, is that it's very possible now to build a dot-based pyromancer that essentially, you know, is like a warlock from World of Warcraft, that essentially kills stuff with massive dots that burn out. So that certainly does lean in that direction, because of course the more status power you have, the more potent your dots are. So I really like this. Scorch Flare sounds like a bomb, because that also features a skill that I really love, and that's of course Phaser Beam. So Master Exploder, which is below it, says explosive skill damage is increased 100% of your resistance piercing. Now we're already getting some resistance piercing from this top one, from Melting Point, right? So this increases it by 100% of your resistance piercing. So again, on lower enemies, then you're going to be able to deal a lot more damage as well, because of the additional you get here. Now, first of all, let's cover what explosive skills are. That's of course Thermal Bomb, which is another one of my favorites. Technically speaking, I like all the Pyromancer skills, but yeah, it's Thermal Bomb, it's Overheat, and it is Eruption. Eruption is the other one. So these just make those explosions or the damage that comes from them that much more potent. Now, there's something to be said for the whole branded sort of playstyle with Thermal Bomb, where you get that additional damage from that, but that's mostly used from a debuff perspective. And a lot of the times, especially if you build it in a true debuff and you're playing it in a group environment, that Pyromancer, you're doing it so that other guys can deal more damage to the enemy. Yes, you do as well, absolutely, but in a group play scenario, a Technomancer, a Firepower Technomancer is really going to shine, because it's just going to be able to hit these sick shots. So this just means that you kind of like will just shine by yourself as well, because again, you'll be able to deal far more damage with those Thermal Bomb explosions, which is great. So then we get to Conduction, and Conduction is just so good. This basically reduce your skill cooldowns by 15%. So to an Anomaly Pyromancer, cooldown reduction is a super important thing, because the majority of your damage, or the majority of utility if you're going debuff, is coming from the fact that you want to be able to cast your abilities, your skills as much as possible. So lower cooldowns means more fun. So this is just a flat 15% reduction, and of course in the normal talent tree there's also more ways for you to get cooldown reduction. So this just further on drives down your cooldowns to ridiculously low levels. Now many Pyromancers that I've built, I've been able to get ridiculous 4-second overheats, and you know, like 6.5 or 7-second heat waves, and then you get 3 of them, and so this is just going to give you a lot more on that. And the fact that you don't have to choose here means that whether you go top, middle, or bot, and the next ones we're going to see, you're going to be benefiting from this 15% reduced cooldown. So going with the top one first, we have Furnace and we have Burnt Offerings. Now I'm going to say it right off the bat, this is kind of like the one that has me the most excited. So Furnace says this increases your status power by 20% for every enemy afflicted with burn. Stacks up to 5 times. Now the skills of yours, of course, that cause burn are Heat Wave, and then Volcanic Rounds, and then of course Phaser. Now generally speaking, if we're looking at something like Akari Pyromancer, then you're using like a wide Heat Wave, and you're trying to get like, you know, 6 or 7 enemies in a bunch, because that powers up your Akari set. And so this is just going to also increase your status power by that amount, and this also stacks up to five times. So it's also just going to make you consecutive hits with, like, let's say if you go Heat Wave, Heat Wave, Heat Wave, and then shoot out a Phaser, what is with my pronunciation? Shoot out a Phaser Beam, that's going to hit like a Mack truck, like a fucking double Mack truck. And it's also just going to make those burns tick really well. So this is really good, but this isn't where the juice lies. The best shit is coming. When we then look at Burnt Offerings, this says increases your burn duration by 500%, and each consecutive burn tick on an enemy deals 10% more damage. This is fucking lovely. This means that you can set a whole bunch of enemies on fire, including bosses, captains, and everything like that, and then you can concentrate on maybe repositioning so that you're going to get crushed by the next wave, or, you know, maybe they're pushing up on you with fucking abilities and there's anomaly blades lying everywhere and it's a fuck show. Then you can move around and everything, but you are still guaranteed damage on whatever you've set on fire, and it burns for 500% longer, which is just a whole bunch of time that this will be on there, and by that time you are repositioned, you're good to go, and you're ready to refresh again. So this is phenomenal. This is the whole dot play style that I was talking about. I love the fucking sound of this. This will be the first thing I try when I hit fucking go on Thursday the 30th of June. this will be the way I go as soon as I can. So then the middle tree, this is Convection and Arsonist. Now, Convection, reduce all skills cooldown by 4 seconds when all skills are on cooldown. Fucking fat choice right there. So this reduces all skill cooldowns by 4 seconds when all skills are on cooldown. So again, let's imagine a situation where you're playing like a debuff pyro. You're using Ash Blast, you're using, let's see, you're using Ash Blast, you're using Volcanic Rounds so that you can get reload boost, that mod, so that you can deal more additional damage, and you're using Thermal Bomb. Now, a lot of the times, and you've got 2 uses on Thermal Bomb, a lot of the times what you're going to do when you play that is you kind of cycle your abilities because you want to, you know, hit them at the right time. This can in effect create a situation where with other cooldown reduction and what you're already getting from conduction, that you're going to be in a situation where cooldown management is not really going to be a problem for you. You can basically just cycle these things as much as you want, hit them as soon as they come off cooldown, because at the very moment when all 3 are off cooldown, it refreshes 4 seconds off all 3 skills and you're good to go, most likely having just gotten 2 of your 3 skills back. I think this is badass. This will be the second thing I try after I try the dots build, but I think Convection sounds fucking juicy. And then Arsonist, activating skills has 30% chance to reset all skills cooldown, 5 seconds cooldown. So again, just ridiculous. Not only are you getting the bonus from Convection and that's how that's dropping, but then you still have this 30% chance that at any given time, as soon as you activate a skill, it actually just resets all of your skills and you can use them again. So this is just gonna make like Pyromancer, Anomaly Pyromancer, just this like ability shit show. You're gonna be able to throw stuff all over the place. I can't wait to see how many thermal bombs are flying around in heat waves and fucking, you know, 4-second phases, basically shooting phaser after phaser after phaser. You know, it's beautiful. It sounds amazing to me. Massive multiple eruptions everywhere. I'm still speaking about the game, by the way, not something else. But yeah, that's just ridiculous. So let's see what's at the bottom here. I'm just gonna scroll down just a tad and see if that stands up to any of the other things that we've said here. So we have Backdraft and we have Trigger Sequence. So Backdraft says your anomaly power is increased by 30% for every skill on cooldown. So again, if you are now, let's say with Backdraft, you want to go for like massive eruptions, something like that. So this would mean that, let's say for instance, I'm trying to think of like the wackiest build here, right? So let's say you go Heat Wave, Thermal Bomb, Eruption. I don't know why you would, but let's say you do that. So let's say you go Heat Wave and you Heat Wave, Heat Wave, Heat Wave, you ramp your damage up that way, then you Thermal Bomb onto something to give it branded, and now those 2 abilities are on cooldown. So now you have 60% in additional anomaly power, and then you throw this fat fucking Eruption on something. I take it back. The bottom tree is just as good, or it's just as interesting sounding as the other 2. Trigger Sequence says activating an explosive skill increases the damage of the next explosive skill by 30%. So just use that exact example I made just now. Just keep going with that. The buff stacks up to 3 times, after which it starts anew. So it kind of like just rotates 30, 60, 90, 30, 60, 90. This is really, really awesome again. And I mean, I want to try all 3 of these. All 3 of these sound fucking ridiculous. But that's it for the anomaly tree. And that's actually it for the video as well. This is a slightly longer one. We're close to the 30-minute mark, but I just couldn't help it. I love talking about Pyromancer as much as the next guy who loves Pyromancer. And I just love talking about Outriders in general. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. If you are a Pyromancer main, tell me how excited you're about this. Are you thinking of going Firepower Pyromancer because that seems as good as it does, or are you Anomaly Pyromancer all the way and you want to see how the rest of them develop? But let me know in the comments down below, what has you more excited about Pyromancer in general. Now also keep an eye on my channel. Recently I started an event which I'm essentially giving away 10 copies of the expansion. So you can enter that event. Just look for the video. It is in the description below, and it basically just involves in you posting something there and then going to the Discord and then posting something there. So it's easy peasy lemon squeezy to get into the competition, and hopefully you are one of the 10 lucky winners who I will draw 1 week before the launch of Worldslayer. This is open to any platform, so it's not just PC bros, anything like that. Whichever platform you're playing the game on, you'll be able to get your prize on, and I'll be drawing them from the big pool of people that have entered that Obviously get your name in there as soon as possible, but you got some time. Speaking about time, that's it for me. It's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.